Hi, Kevin here. Today we're fixing ciabatta bread, and this is what it looks like. So the bread has a crackling crisp crust, and when you cut into it, it has a nice open crumb, lots of air pockets, and the bread has a deep fermented aroma. It's a really lovely bread. Okay, let me show you the recipe. All right, ciabatta gets its great aroma from what's called a pre-fermentation or a Biga. And what you need is 250 grams of bread flour. But bread flour is about 12.7% protein. And you do want to weigh all of the ingredients. So I have my big mixing bowl on a scale here. So that's 250 grams of bread flour and 2 grams or a quarter teaspoon of instant yeast, and then just stir the yeast into the flour. Yeah, you don't have to dissolve instant yeast in water. You just mix it into the dry ingredients. Then let me zero out the scale. And then we're going to add 250 grams of room temperature water. And then just stir these ingredients together. I'm using a wooden spatula here. And we're going to let this Biga rest and ferment for at least 6 hours. You can let your Biga ferment for up to 24 hours. There we are. And then just scrape off the spatula. And then cover the bowl with cling film. And set this aside again for 6 to 24 hours. Now, I have some Biga that I started last night, so I'll go fetch that now. All right, here's the Biga that I made last night. It's puffy and bubbly and very much alive, and it smells just terrific. So now to the Biga, I'm going to add 250 grams of bread flour. Just sprinkle that right on top of the Biga. Then add 4 grams of instant yeast. And 4 grams is 1 teaspoon. Sprinkle that on top of the flour. Then add 8 grams, which is 1.5 teaspoons of salt. There's 1.5. Then add a 1/2 cup or 125 grams of room temperature water. Right, then give this a really good mix. Now, this is a high hydration dough, and that's why I suggest that you weigh your flour rather than measure it by the cup. Because if you add too much flour, you won't get the, you won't get the air pockets, the characteristic air pockets for which ciabatta is famous. If you add too little flour, you'll end up with a big soupy mess. Okay. Yes, So this is a really wet, sticky dough. And now, I hate to tell you this, but we have to knead the dough for 8 minutes. And you can do the kneading work with a stand mixer outfitted with the dough hook, or you can do what I'm going to do and just manipulate the dough with a spoon or a spatula. So you can stir it. You can stir it 10 times with your right hand and then 10 times with your left hand, because trust me, your hands and your arms are going to get tired here. You can also just lift the dough and then let it fall back into the bowl. You just want to move the dough about to help develop the strands of gluten. All right, I'm going to do this for 8 minutes and then I'll come back. All right, I've manipulated the dough for about 8 minutes. And as you can see, it has a bit of structure now. And of course, it's a really sticky dough because again, it's a high hydration dough. So now, what I'm going to do is grab a clean bowl. I'm going to add just a tiny amount of olive oil. Maybe half a teaspoon or so, and then use the oil to grease the bowl. There we are. And then, using your oily hand, scrape the dough out of the first mixing bowl and put it in the clean oiled bowl. Use my scraper here. Look at that. These are strands of gluten. Yeah, very sticky dough. So now I'm going to cover this with cling film. Look at my hand. And then going to set this aside, let it rest for 30 to 45 minutes. Then we're going to stretch and fold the dough. All right, it's 30 minutes later and the dough has done absolutely nothing. It hasn't risen at all. It's not puffy, but you'll see it's going to change very shortly. So what we're going to do now is called a stretch and fold technique. So what you want to do is have a little cup of olive oil handy. Probably have 2 or 3 tablespoons of olive oil in here. Rub it on your fingertips. And then pull up one end of the dough and stretch it and fold it over and turn the bowl. So we're going north, south, east, and west. Doing all 4 corners of the dough. Stretch and fold the dough over on itself. And give it a shake when you stretch. What we're doing is building structure in the dough. Okay, and that's it. So that's 4 folds. And then, once again, cover the bowl, either with a tea towel or with cling film. And let this rest at room temperature for another 30 minutes. And if your kitchen is really cold, let's say below 70 degrees, let the dough rest for 45 minutes. Okay, we'll come back. All right, it's been about 35 minutes, so we're ready for another stretch and fold. We will be doing the stretch and fold 3 times in total. So once again, oil your fingers, and then, now notice how the dough has really changed. It has structure now. It's not sticking to the bottom of the bowl. So then lift, stretch the dough, fold it over on itself, turn the bowl, stretch, fold, stretch, fold, stretch, and fold. This dough is looking like dough. All right, cover, and just as before, let it rest for 30 to 45 minutes. Okay, we'll come back, do our final stretch and fold. All right, 30 minutes later, and it's time for the final stretch and fold. Now, look how much this dough has risen. It's very puffy, it's got a lot of bubbles now. It's really nice. May not even have to oil your hands at this point. Stretch and fold. Just bring it up, fold it over on itself. All right, and then, as before, cover, let rest for 30 minutes. Afterwards, we're going to form the loaves. Okay, obviously this is not a fast bread, but it's a delicious bread, totally worth your time. Okay, I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, we're getting ready to form the loaves, so first, be sure to flour your work surface very generously. My work surface is this marble board, and you want to make sure you flour every inch of the board because this dough will stick like glue. Also, decide on what you're going to bake the ciabatta. You can bake ciabatta on a parchment lined baking sheet, as I did yesterday, or if you plan to use a pizza stone or baking steel in your oven, then line a pizza paddle with baking sheet. Here, let me move you out so you can see the pizza paddle. Here it is. All right. Move you back in. Now, remembering that the bubbles in this dough were hard won, you don't want to deflate the dough. Just turn it up, turn the bowl upside down on the floured board and let the dough release itself naturally, as mine is doing right now. Come on, keep going. Let's see. Are you moving? Yes. Almost there. Here we go. Okay. Then flour a bench scraper. Again, you're going to use a lot of flour in this step. And then you want to very gently square off the dough. More flour here. Be gentle because, again, you don't want to deflate the dough, or you want to deflate it as little as possible. And then form the loaves. Now you can form them any shape you like. You could cut this into 2 pieces and have 2 loaves, or you could cut it into quarters. I'm going to cut mine into quarters because I like to use ciabatta for sandwiches. And then, of course, you want to generously flour the top of the dough. And remember, we're not incorporating this flour into the dough, it's just external coverage. Okay, so push straight down. And then keep flouring your bench scraper. Go. Another flour job over here, and on the other side as well. Here we are. Now, remembering that the folds are on the underside, the folds we made when we were, manipulating the dough, the underside of the loaf is the more attractive side. So what I'm going to do is, can you see all right here? Let me move you up a little. I'm going to very gently flip the little loaves here onto my parchment lined pizza peel. Here's one. Here's 2. You over. Here's 3. Flip. And got to make room here for the 4th one. And 4. Okay. Move this out of the way. And then going to cover these loaves with a tea towel. And let them rest until they pretty much double in volume. This is going to take 45 minutes to an hour. Meanwhile, let me show you how to prepare the oven. All right, now I'm using a baking steel, but you don't have to. And I have my oven rack set at the upper 3rd position. And then you want to preheat the oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, the loaves have risen. And I'm a little nervous because I'm using this pizza peel for the first time. And there isn't a lot of room on it, so some of the loaves are touching each other, but we'll see what happens. Okay, now I'm going to show you how I put these in the oven. Okay, just slide the loaves into the oven, parchment paper and all. Okay, now I'm going to add some steam to the oven during the first 5 minutes of baking. So I'm just going to open the oven door very quickly and spritz water in. Here we go. Okay. And I'm going to do this 3 times during the first 5 minutes of baking, and the loaves will bake for about 30 minutes or until they're nice and brown on the top. Okay, we'll come back. All right, here are the loaves all baked and brown and beautiful. I have to say they look even more attractive than the loaves I made yesterday. All right, so I'm going to let these cool to room temperature, and then we can cut one open to see the interior. Okay, the bread isn't quite at room temperature yet, but I still wanted to cut open one of the loaves for you. And listen to this. It's a crackling crisp crust. Here we go. I'm slicing it horizontally in half because I will use this for a sandwich. Look at this. Loads of air pockets. And that's exactly what you want from ciabatta. Well, I hope you will give this glorious ciabatta bread a try someday. It's really not a difficult bread to make. It just requires time, but most of that time is hands off. So thank you so much for watching, and I will post the list of ingredients in the description box below. All right, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.